The forest had a reputation that spread across villages and towns like a whisper of death. People called it cursed, a place where the sun never truly reached the ground and where even brave hunters refused to step. The trees stood too close together, their trunks twisted as if they had grown in pain. Strange shadows slid between the branches, and voices could be heard at night, though no one was there. Few who entered ever returned, and those who did spoke in broken words, trembling like children, their eyes hollow with fear. The human soldier named Eric had no choice but to enter. The war had driven him into the wilderness, his comrades gone, his enemies chasing him, and his strength slowly bleeding away. He staggered between the crooked trees with nothing but a dull blade and the will to live. His boots were torn, his body scratched, and hunger bit at him like a pack of wolves. He should have turned back, but there was nowhere else to go. Behind him was death by sword. Ahead of him was the cursed forest and maybe, just maybe, a chance to survive. The moment he crossed the thick roots that marked the forest's edge, the world seemed to change. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp soil and rotting leaves. Birds went silent, and the buzzing of insects faded into a strange echo. Every sound seemed louder, the crunch of his steps, the thud of his heartbeat. The deeper he went, the darker it became, though the sun still burned above the treetops. It was as if the forest itself swallowed the light. Eric told himself to keep moving, one step, then another. He thought about water, food, and shelter. He thought about staying alive. Yet soon, he began to hear things. First a low growl that seemed to come from nowhere. Then a whisper, soft and clear, calling his name though no one was there. He shook his head and pushed forward, gripping his sword even though he knew it would not save him from the unseen. Hours passed like days, and the forest seemed endless. He stumbled across broken bones, the skulls of deer and wolves cracked open as if by giant hands. Strange marks carved into bark glowed faintly in the dim light, symbols that twisted his stomach when he stared too long. His heart pounded faster, his breath short. He was walking in a place where men were never meant to be. Then he heard something else. Not a growl, not a whisper, but a cry. It was faint, carried by the wind, yet different from the other sounds. It was not meant to frighten. It was the cry of someone in pain. Eric froze, his instincts pulling him in two directions. Part of him screamed to run, to get away, but another part whispered that if there was another living soul here, it could mean help, or at least answers. His legs moved before his mind decided, and he followed the sound. He pushed through vines and thick branches, his sword cutting away the thorns. The cry grew louder, mixed with heavy breathing, the sound of a struggle. Finally, he reached a clearing where a pool of muddy water sat beneath the drooping branches of an ancient tree. And there he saw something that made his breath stop, a figure half buried in the mud, struggling to rise. At first, Eric thought it was a great beast, the body of a horse sinking in the swamp. But then he saw the upper half a woman, her skin pale and glowing even under the filth, her hair long like gold, tangled with leaves. Armor covered her shoulders and chest, though cracked and worn, as if she had fought for days. She had the body of a warrior, yet her face carried both strength and sorrow. A centaur. Eric had heard of them only in stories, told by old men by the fire. They were said to be proud and fierce, a race that had once ruled the wild lands before war and hunger destroyed them. To see one here, alive, was something he could not believe. She struggled in the mud, her horse body sinking deeper, her human arms clawing at the ground. She was strong, but exhaustion pulled her down. Her lips moved and a broken whisper came out. Human. Help me. Eric's grip tightened on his sword. His heart thundered. The cursed forest had shown him bones, shadows, whispers, and now this. He did not know if it was real or another trick to break his mind. But he saw the desperation in her eyes, the way her hands trembled as she reached for him. This was no ghost. This was flesh, blood, and breath. For a moment he stood frozen, torn between fear and instinct. Then he stepped forward into the mud, reaching for her arm. The cold swamp water dragged at his legs, but he did not stop. Her golden eyes met his, wide and filled with something he did not expect. Not hatred, not pride, but a plea. She was not only fighting for her life. She was fighting for something far greater. And deep in that cursed forest, Eric realized that his battle had only just begun. Eric's boots sank deeper into the mud as he pulled at her arm. The centaur groaned, her strength faltering with every moment she remained trapped. He braced his legs against the roots jutting out of the swamp and yanked again, muscles straining. At last her body shifted upward, the horse half of her frame rising above the muck. Mud splashed around them as he dragged her onto firmer ground. The centaur collapsed on her side, gasping for breath, her chest heaving under cracked armor. Her golden hair clung to her face, dripping with swamp water. For a moment Eric simply stared, unable to believe what he had done. He had pulled a creature from legend into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, sharp and fierce despite her weakness. "Human," she rasped, her voice carrying both command and desperation. "You should not be here. This forest eats men alive." Eric leaned on his sword like a cane, panting heavily. "I had no choice," he muttered. "The war drove me here. I was running from death." Her lips curved into something close to a bitter smile. "Then you ran into another kind of death." Silence fell between them, broken only by the rustling of unseen creatures in the trees. The forest watched them, heavy and waiting. Eric could feel it pressing on his chest, as if the air itself wanted him gone. "You are wounded," he said at last, noticing the blood seeping from a deep gash on her flank. The armor there was shattered, the skin beneath torn. She winced, trying to push herself upright, but failing. "I fought them. The shadows. They hunt me, because I am the last." "The last what?" Eric asked, though the answer was already forming in his mind. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly even in the gloom. "The last centaur. My people are gone. Hunted, cursed, broken. I alone remain." Eric's throat went dry. He had heard such tales of dying races fading into legend, but to hear it from her lips was different. It was truth, heavy and undeniable. She struggled again, this time managing to rise halfway, bracing herself against a tree. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what she carried. "I begged the forest spirits to let me live. They mocked me, said survival would mean nothing. What is one without kin? But then, they spoke of humans. Of your kind stubbornness, your will to endure." Eric frowned. "You think I can help you?" Her hand reached out, grasping his wrist with surprising strength. "Not think. No, if I fall, my bloodline ends. My people vanish forever. But if you stand with me, if you carry what I cannot, there may be hope." The words struck him like a blade. He had fought for kings and banners, for causes that left him bleeding in mud. Never had anyone asked him to carry a people's future. His instinct was to refuse. He was just a man, a soldier with nothing left. What could he possibly do for her? But when he looked into her eyes, he saw not only desperation, but also belief. She truly thought he was the answer. Before he could speak, the forest itself shuddered. A low growl echoed through the trees, and shapes moved in the shadows. Eric lifted his sword, the edge catching what little light pierced the canopy. His heart hammered. The centaur tensed, forcing herself onto unsteady legs. She drew a broken spear from the mud, her body trembling but her stance unyielding. "They come again," she hissed. Eric swallowed hard, stepping closer to her side. The shadows grew larger, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Dozens of them, maybe more, circling like wolves. Their forms were twisted, neither beast nor spirit, creatures born of the curse that rotted this place. "You saved me," the centaur whispered. her voice almost lost in the rising growls. "Now fight with me, human. Prove this spirit's wrong. Prove that we can endure." Eric gripped his sword tighter. He felt fear clawing at him, but he also felt something else stirring a fire he thought long extinguished. He had run into this forest to escape death. Now, standing beside the last of a dying race, he found a reason to fight again. The shadows lunged. Steel met darkness. And for the first time since the war, Eric did not fight for survival alone. He fought for her. The first wave of shadow beasts crashed into them like a storm. Eric swung his sword, the steel biting through something that felt both solid and mist at once. The creature shrieked, dissolving into smoke, but two more took its place. Their bodies twisted like wolves with too many teeth, eyes burning pale green. Beside him, the centaur struck with her broken spear. Even wounded, she fought with a fury that made Eric pause. Her hooves smashed into the ground, sending one creature tumbling into the swamp. Another lunged at her side, but she caught it with her arm, muscles straining. Before driving the jagged spearhead through its chest, Eric had seen warriors before men, women, even beasts in war, but nothing like her. She fought as if every breath was her last, every strike her final chance to defend a memory of her people. And maybe it was, but the forest did not relent. More shadows poured from the trees, snarling and clawing, their whispers cutting into Eric's mind. He stumbled for a moment, gripping his skull as the voices grew louder. They called him a fool, told him to surrender, to fall into the mud and become part of the forest's curse. His knees buckled, and for an instant he almost believed them. Then a hand seized his shoulder, shaking him back to focus. The centaur's eyes blazed like molten gold as she shouted, "Do not listen. They feed on weakness. Fight them, human." Her voice cut through the whispers like steel through cloth. Eric steadied himself, teeth clenched, and roared as he swung his blade in a wide arc. The shadows scattered, shrieking, before circling once more. The battle raged until his arms burned and his breath came in ragged gasps. Slowly, the tide shifted. One by one, the beasts fell or fled back into the darkness between the trees. At last, silence returned, broken only by their panting. The swamp stilled. The cursed forest seemed to pause, watching. Eric leaned against his sword, sweat and mud dripping from his body. "What in the gods' names are these things?" he asked. The centaur wiped blood and muck from her face. "Remnants," she said, voice heavy. "Creatures twisted by the curse. They are what remain of those who entered the forest and lost themselves." His stomach twisted. "You mean they were once people?" She did not answer. Her silence was enough. He sank down against a tree, staring at the ground. Every bone in his body ached. He thought of leaving, of finding a way out, but the forest seemed endless. And now, with the centaur before him, leaving no longer felt like an option. She lowered herself beside him, her strength clearly fading. Her wound bled steadily, staining her flank. "You fought well, human. Few can stand against the curse for long. I didn't have much of a choice," he muttered. Her hand brushed the mud, fingers trembling. "Still, you chose to fight. That means something." She paused, her voice softening. "What do they call you?" "Eric," he said. She nodded slowly. "I am Lysera." Her name seemed to carry weight, like the last word of the song nearly forgotten. He repeated it once, quietly, and she gave the faintest smile. But the smile faded quickly, replaced by grim determination. "Eric, you must understand. My people were proud once, guardians of the wild lands. But greed and fear drove men and other races to hunt us. The curse finished what the hunters began. Now only I remain. If I die, everything ends. Centaurs will become nothing but dust and forgotten tales." Eric's jaw tightened. He had run from war, from kings who sent men to die for banners, from causes that never mattered. And yet here was a cause laid bare before him, one creature's plea for survival, for hope. "You said I could help," he said quietly. "How?" Her golden eyes fixed on him, unwavering. "By carrying my bloodline. By standing with me against the forest, and giving what I can no longer find among my own." The words struck deep, heavier than any wound. Eric looked away, his heart pounding. He was no savior, no chosen hero. He was just a soldier with scars. Yet the way she looked at him, with trust carved from desperation, made him feel something he had long buried. The cursed forest groaned, the trees creaking as if alive, and Eric realized the shadows would come again. The battle was far from over. But now he knew the truth. This was not only about surviving the forest. It was about saving a dying legacy. And for the first time in years, Eric felt that maybe his life had a purpose again. The fire crackled weakly, built from damp branches that barely caught flame. Eric sat close, sharpening his sword with slow, tired strokes. Lysera rested a few paces away, her body slumped but her eyes watchful. Even wounded, she seemed to radiate strength, though he could see the pain in the way she shifted her weight. For the first time since stepping into the cursed forest, Eric felt a fragile sense of calm. The battle had ended, but the silence of the woods pressed around them. He could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes still followed their every move. Lysera's voice broke the stillness. "The shadows will return. They always return. Unless we move." Eric sighed, sliding the blade back into its sheath. "Move where? This forest stretches forever. I've seen no end to it." Her golden eyes glimmered in the dim firelight. "There is an end. Deep within lies the heart of the curse, a place my people once called sacred. It was there we fell. It is there I must go, and you with me." Eric frowned. "And if we reach it? What then?" She shifted closer, her voice low. "There lies the relic of my people, the Stone of Echoes. It holds our memories, our blood, our legacy. If it is destroyed, the curse will claim me fully. But if it can be awakened, then perhaps my kind will not vanish entirely." Her words carried the weight of centuries. Eric stared into the fire, his thoughts torn. He had already risked his life for her once. To walk deeper into the forest, toward a place cursed enough to destroy an entire race, was madness. Yet he could not ignore her plea. He remembered the desperation in her voice when she first called for help. It was more than survival. It was the last hope of a people. "Then we move at dawn," he said at last. Lysera gave a small nod, and though her body trembled, relief softened her expression. When morning came, they set out together. The forest grew darker the deeper they walked, the trees taller, their roots twisted into shapes that looked almost human. Strange flowers bloomed in the shadows, glowing faintly, their petals dripping with thick liquid that smelled of iron. Eric tried not to touch anything, but the air itself seemed alive, brushing against his skin. They walked in silence for hours until Lysera suddenly stopped, her ears twitching. Eric tensed, hand on his sword. From between the trees came a soft rustle, followed by a low, guttural growl. The shadows emerged again, but these were different. Larger, heavier, their bodies shaped like bears with jaws too wide, dripping black mist. "Stay close," Lysera warned, lowering her broken spear. Eric drew his blade, sweat beading on his brow. The creatures circled them, their eyes burning with unnatural hunger. He counted at least 6. The first lunged, and Eric met it with steel, his sword sliding deep into its neck. The creature howled, dissolving, but another slammed into him from the side. He crashed against a tree, pain exploding through his ribs. The beast snapped its teeth inches from his face, but Lysera's hooves struck hard, sending it sprawling. Together they fought, back to back. Lysera moved like a storm, her hooves crushing skulls, her spear darting forward with deadly precision. Eric's sword flashed in the gloom, each strike fueled by desperation. They were outnumbered, yet neither gave ground. Finally, the last creature fell, vanishing into mist. Eric dropped to his knees, chest heaving, his sword arm shaking. Lysera leaned against a tree, blood dripping from her flank where the wound had reopened. Eric crawled toward her, pressing his hand against the gash to stop the bleeding. She winced but did not pull away. "You should leave me," she whispered. "The curse grows stronger the deeper we go. It will claim me, and you with me." "No," Eric said firmly, his hand steady against her wound. "I didn't come this far to watch you die. If there's a chance to end this curse, we'll see it through. Together." Her eyes widened slightly, as if his words surprised her. For a long moment, she said nothing, only stared at him. Then, slowly she reached out and clasped his wrist. Her touch was warm despite her weakness. "You are not like the others," she said softly. "Perhaps." The spirits were right. Perhaps humans endure where all else fails. Eric met her gaze, his heart heavy but resolute. The cursed forest groaned around them, as if warning them back. But there was no turning back now. The path ahead was dark, but together they would walk it. The path grew stranger the deeper they went. The air grew heavy, thick like smoke, and every breath tasted of metal. Trees loomed like silent giants, their bark covered in symbols carved long ago, glowing faintly as if they remembered who made them. Eric felt the weight of history pressing down on him, though he could not understand it. Lysera limped beside him, her wounds slowing her steps. Still, she pushed forward, her jaw set, her golden eyes burning with purpose. Eric supported her when the pain grew too strong, his arm steady against her side. He could feel her strength even in weakness, like a flame refusing to die. At last, they reached a clearing. The forest opened to reveal crumbled stone walls, half buried under vines and roots. Towers long fallen lay broken across the ground. Statues of proud warriors, half horse, half human, stood cracked and weathered, their faces eroded by time. An ancient ruin. Lysera stopped, her breath catching in her throat. "This was our city," she whispered. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from sorrow. "Here we lived, we fought, we dreamed. Now it is nothing." Eric looked around in silence. The ruins stretched far, swallowed by the forest, yet the remains told him this place had once been mighty. He imagined streets filled with her people, strong and proud. To see it now silent, broken, made his chest ache, though it was not his history. At the center of the ruins lay a great stone altar. It was cracked but still stood, glowing faintly with blue light. Strange energy pulsed from it, making the hair on Eric's arms rise. Lysera limped toward it, each step heavier than the last. "The Stone of Echoes," she said. "It holds the last of my people's memory. Their voices, their blood, their promise. If it dies, we are gone forever." Eric followed, sword ready. The forest seemed to shift around them, the shadows stirring. He could feel it, the curse growing stronger near the altar. The air buzzed with unseen power. Lysera placed her hand on the stone. Light rippled outward, casting strange patterns across her skin. Her body shook, her eyes closing as if listening to voices only she could hear. "What is it saying?" Eric asked, his hand hovering near her shoulder, her lips parted, her voice distant. "They ask, if you are worthy." Eric stiffened. "Me?" She opened her eyes, golden light glowing inside them. "Yes, they see you. A human who entered the cursed forest and did not fall. A man who fought when he could have fled. They ask if you will carry what remains." The ground trembled. The forest roared with 100 whispers, swirling around them. Shapes moved in the ruins, the shadows returning, more than before. Their eyes blazed, their forms twisted into nightmares. Eric raised his sword, his voice steady though his heart pounded. "If it's a fight they want, they'll have it." Lysera turned to him, her face fierce yet soft. "It is more than a fight, Eric. They ask if you will bind yourself to us. If you will stand not just as a warrior, but as the seed of a future. If you will help me carry my people beyond this forest. Her words struck like a hammer. This was more than survival. This was a choice that would tie him to her forever. He looked at the ruins, at the broken statues, at the eyes that glowed in the dark. He thought of the war he left behind, of banners and kings that meant nothing. And he thought of Lysera, her strength, her plea, her unbroken spirit. He lowered his sword slightly. Then tell them yes. Tell him I will not let you fade. Lysera's eyes softened, her hand trembling as she pressed it harder against the stone. The blue light surged, wrapping around them both, burning bright enough to chase the shadows back. For a moment, Eric felt as if he stood inside 1,000 voices, all crying, all singing, all begging to be remembered. The ground shook harder. The shadows screamed in fury, rushing at them with claws and teeth. Eric raised his sword again, planting himself in front of Lysera. The forest would test his answer, and he was ready to prove it. The ruins shook as if the earth itself rejected them. The shadows poured from every corner, twisting into monstrous shapes with claws and fangs sharper than steel. Their shrieks tore through the air, drowning out the whispers that had haunted Eric since entering the cursed forest. This was no longer a hunt. It was judgment. Eric stood firm in front of Lysera, his sword gripped tight. The blue light of the Stone of Echoes swirled around them, clinging to his skin like fire. He could feel voices pressing into him, countless souls carried within the stone, demanding, pleading, testing. Lysera's voice rang out behind him, strong though her body trembled. They will not let us pass unless you prove it. Not just strength, not just survival. They want your heart, Eric. Show them why you fight. The first beast lunged. Eric met it with steel, his blade cutting through its black flesh. It screamed and dissolved, but 2 more replaced it. He fought with everything he had, each swing powered not by rage but by resolve. He was not fighting for kings or banners now. He was fighting for her, for Lysera, for the memory of her people, for something greater than himself. Blood trickled down his arm where claws had caught him, but he did not falter. Every time he struck, he shouted in defiance, "I will not let her die." His words echoed louder than the beast's screams. Her people will not vanish. The shadows hesitated, their forms flickering. The stone pulsed brighter, its glow spreading across the ruins. Lysera pressed her hand harder against it, her golden eyes fixed on him. They hear you. They believe. But the largest of the shadows rose before them, towering like a mountain of smoke and teeth. Its voice thundered across the ruins, shaking the stones. One man cannot carry a dying race. Your bones will join the forest. Eric staggered, but did not retreat. He raised his sword, his voice hoarse, yet unbroken. Then let my bones be proof. A man may fall, but humanity endures. We fight, we bleed, we rise again. If she is the last, then I will be the first to stand with her. That is enough. The giant shadow roared and crashed down on him. Eric met it head on, his sword glowing with the light of the stone. Steel and spirit collided. For a moment, the forest itself screamed, every tree groaning, every root splitting. Then the shadow shattered into ash, vanishing into the wind. Silence fell. The remaining beasts dissolved like mist at dawn. The ruins stilled. Only the sound of Eric's heavy breathing filled the clearing. He dropped to one knee, his body shaking, blood soaking his tunic. Yet he was alive. Lysera stumbled forward, her wound reopened, but her eyes burned with something fierce and eternal. She knelt beside him, her hand pressing against his chest, not to heal but to hold. The Stone of Echoes glowed once more, then sank into the ground, its light fading as if its burden had been passed. It is done, she whispered. Tears shone in her eyes, though her voice was steady. They accept you. You are part of us now. Eric looked at her, exhaustion heavy on him. but a strange peace filling his chest. "Then you're not the last anymore." Her lips trembled into a small, broken smile. "No, not the last. The first of something new." The cursed forest began to change. The dark mist lifted, sunlight breaking through the canopy for the first time in centuries. Flowers bloomed among the cracked stones. The air no longer smelled of iron but of life returning. Eric and Lysera stood together amid the ruins, two survivors bound by more than chance. She leaned against him, her strength fading but her spirit blazing. He wrapped an arm around her, steadying her. Knowing their journey was far from over, the forest had tested him, broken others before him, but he had endured. And in doing so, he had given a dying race its last hope. For the first time since the war began, Eric felt he belonged somewhere, not as a soldier, not as a fugitive, but as a man chosen by fate. Beside him stood Lysera, the last centaur no longer alone, and together, they walked forward, not into shadow, but into a future born from survival, courage, and the promise of a new beginning.